Hello and welcome back to how to make oak and horse chestnut. I thought I'd show you some horse chestnut stem that I'd made a while ago, but I made these in a very pale green and left the edges pale, so that's another option for you. But first of all, I'm going to use some half-width tape and tape down my stem. So I'm not taping a huge amount, as you can see. I'm only going to tape the bit that could potentially be visible. So you always stretch your tape first to get your tape started and sticky, because the stickiness is not one side or the other, it's in between the horizontal lines on the tape. And you tape it at an angle and then you slide up the tape to meet the top of the leaf. So you're going to go ahead and do that to all of your horse chestnut leaves. And I haven't dusted them yet. I just find that if I can tape them first, if I've got time to do that, then any dusting that goes onto the tape gives you so much better of an effect, because it looks more natural because you've got that dust on the tape, haven't you? But look, I'm only taping about 1 inch, maybe 3 centimeters. You could even get away for competition work 1 centimeter, because you don't see much of the stem of the leaf. The taping is actually to help hold it in place. So when you tape together these leaves in a grouping, you don't want them swinging around and moving and making it really hard to keep them in place. Now, if you're just joining us for the first time, part 1, we made all of this that you can see in front of us, except for the finished stem. And we also made some oak leaves and acorns as well. And we are using today Hearty Soft Deluxe, which is an air drying clay. But I gave all the information so you could do it using flour paste or gum paste. But it is really important to get your leaves and your stems taped. Now, a lot of people always say to me, well, I don't get it. Why don't you just use green wire? Because the green wire is actually very slippery. So if you just grabbed a bundle of leaves and tape them all together at the same time, they would just keep swinging around. So definitely taping them together is actually what keeps them held into place where you need them. And it also means if you've got a fragile leaf, maybe like an ivy where the little lobes point out down at the bottom, what you can actually do, where we start taping about 0.5 centimeter below the leaf, once you've finished taping about 1 inch, you slide that tape up and you never accidentally knock down that leaf, do you? Now, when we made these horse chestnut leaves, we had 1 large, 2 medium and 2 small. So what I'm going to do now is I'm comparing them and I'm going to separate them into 2 little groups, because we're going to make another version of what you can see on that left-hand side. So you will find that naturally some leaves will pair better than others when you sit and you go through them. So now I've got that, I can just leave them as they are. And as I mentioned, and I just pointed back again because in class I was explaining, you could add a little bit of cream dust to the edges, a little bit of brown dust, but these were very pale, and I like them a lot, I must admit. But we're doing a slightly more growing version. We're not doing the slightly dead version. We wanted these to look like they were still growing on the tree. So next up, we're going to add some tape to these oak leaves. And these haven't been coloured yet. We just coloured them this colour to start off with. Now you can also start your oak leaves with a very pale ivory stroke cream. So if you wanted those pretty yellowy leaves when we finish, that's a really great way to do it. And of course you could absolutely do them in green. But this is going to be an autumn arrangement. And don't forget to have a little look through my videos. I'll pop a link at the end, but I've also done fir cones and they look so great with all of these together. Now I couldn't decide. I decided, do you know what? Because these leaves for the oak are going to look very autumnal, I'm going to use brown stem. But you need to have a look at the tree itself. It depends on how alive those leaves are. Those stems might still be green, but then they'll be attached to a thicker branch which will be brown. But I wanted them to look really quite browny in this one, which gives you a bit of a hint what we're doing. And I'm still using half width, because if you stretch your tape really tightly and very close to the stem, you can still get it 1/4 thickness while using half thickness. It's just all about that angle. So if your tape is almost lying flat along the wire, when you twist it around, you'll get that beautifully thin, finely taped stem, which is what we're always aiming for, really. Now we can move on to the messy bit, which is the dusting. Yes, you can airbrush, yes, you can paint, you can sponge paint colour on as well, but I really do like a bit of dusting. So first of all, we're going to do the horse chestnut leaves, and for this one, we're just going to use simple colours. We're going to do moss green and dark green, but as I mentioned, if you wanted that leaf to look as if it's really getting a bit ragged, you could add some brown, some milk chocolate, dark chocolate to the edges, or some nutkin brown. And you can even heat up a metal skewer and push it through the leaf. But as I mentioned, we wanted these ones to look alive. Now I'm really scrubbing this moss green colour, particularly onto the front of the leaf. And by scrubbing, I mean I've got my brush, so I'm using the point of the brush and I'm going side to side. You watch now, I'll start into the middle. There we go, straight along the central vein and scrub to one side, central vein, scrub to the other side. And on the back, it just needs a lighter coat. And the reason I'm doing that is because I want the whole leaf to be covered in moss green. It just means you can decide on your base. But I like to start with the light because I can just add a little bit of shadow then with the darker colour. So the back is lighter, as I mentioned. And see the scrubbing going on there. A filbert brush is particularly good because it loads up with colour really, really well. There we go. And it is going to transform really radically at the end as well when we get the glazes out. But they've got really gorgeous veins on these leaves, and I really wanted to make sure that we can see them. So having this lighter colour as the base coat of the leaf. Oh yeah, pop it back in as well. So, you know, if you're going to use it for the same thing, that's absolutely fine. So I'm moving on to the dark green now. Let's go a bit slower. And can you see I loaded into the centre and I'm just catching the surface a bit on this one. So it's not completely covering everything of the leaf. I appreciate it might not stand out in the video, but if you scrub in too much, I'm almost like swipe, lift, rather than particularly scrubbing back and forth. But if you do scrub, then you might as well have put dark green practically. I'm also leaving the edges slightly lighter as well. And on the back, I'm just being a bit more cautious with my colour. So swipe, see? And every now and again, I'll scrub a little bit if I want it to have a little aged look. So I need to go ahead and do that to all of those leaves as well. Concentrating the extra colour down that central vein. You can always use a photographer's lens cleaner, which is like a hurricane blower, to blow the extra dust away. But at the moment, even though I've got dust on my kitchen paper, I quite often tend to pick that dust back up and use it on the leaf. So it doesn't go to waste. But if you are concerned about waste, you can actually use white copy paper to dust onto, and then you can tip it back into the pot afterwards. One little word of caution. If you usually use edible, do not tip the dust back in if you've used it on cold porcelain or air drying clay, because that would be cross-contamination. But I have literally spent the last 18 months working in cold porcelain, so I'm confident that all of my colours are only used for one thing. But yeah, wait till you see when these are glazed later on. I will tell you later anyway, but if you're working with sugar, it's really good to use the regular, say for example, a PME spray glaze. You might have your own brand that you like the Cake Star is another good one, but I want a matte one for this one, so the PME spray glaze is perfect. Cake Star is really nice and shiny, so if you were doing holly leaves, for example, it would be perfect. If you're using cold porcelain, you can also use the same stuff, but if you're using Hearty Soft Deluxe, sometimes the edible sprays make it go sticky, so in that case you could use hairspray. Now the oak leaves is where the bundles of colours come out. So you can decide on this. Your oak leaf could still have lots of green at the base. It could have lots of yellow. It could have really nice mixtures of oranges and reds. But what I always tend to do with my oak leaves is right at the base of the leaf, even when I've started with the dark cream, what green is left on my brush, I'm just going to lightly brush at the bottom. So it's just to sort of give it a hint of life, but because I've got brown stems, I couldn't make that green really obvious today. So the colours you can see in front of you are all by Fractal Colors. I've got lemon yellow, I've got a gorgeous terracota and squirrel brown. So they're your lighter sort of shades. Then I've got a rust red, which is absolutely gorgeous. And just off camera, I've got milk chocolate and dark chocolate. And it's always worth noting that you can really mix these colours up. So if you're working on a big plate, for example, I've kept them separate today so that it's easier for people to see. But if you're working on a big plate, then you might actually find it easier to just let them spread together. Now, after you've done that little bit of moss green at the bottom, I'm putting a little bit of lemon yellow around the top edges. So let's have a close-up look at that. So coming from the edge into the leaf, and it just means those edges have just got a little bit of a tinge on them. You can still dust over this, but don't forget, if you over dust with something, the colour they will merge together. It won't just be one solid colour. But I'm going to go ahead and put that yellow on all of them. So let's do this rather quickly. And as I mentioned, starting from above the leaf and catching the edge and brushing down. And if I was going from the bottom, I would start from like basically the stem and brush up. The terracotta is absolutely gorgeous. Now you can just use an orange, you can add a little bit of red into it, a little bit of brown into it. And I'm not putting all my colour in the same place because I want this colour to have, this leaf to have little mixtures of colours going on. So I've popped the terracotta off to the one side, as you can see, and I just put a little splash on the back. And you don't have to do the same, but I will confess we were having a lovely chat right now because this was obviously from our class. This was back from September last year. And we were just having a very nice flower making session, actually. There we go. So let's just finish off this terracotta. But a nice mixture, you could use a little bit of nasturtium, or you could just mix in any of your browns with it or your reds with it. And you can mix up your own colours. You don't have to start with the reddy colour. There we go. So we've done our yellow, done our terracotta. And as I mentioned, I'm popping them away. And now I'm going to move on to a really delicious colour, which is squirrel brown. Yes, it's perfect for animals, but oh my goodness, it's brilliant for leaves. Watch this colour now when it starts to appear. Look how autumnal that is straight away. So if you're looking for other brands, Chestnut Brown by Squire's Kitchen is really gorgeous as well. There's lots of glorious colours out there. But if you haven't got this, get a little bit of orange and mix it in with your brown and maybe add a little hint of red as well. And just have a little play with your colours and see what you get. And that's the beauty of autumn leaves, because no two leaves look the same. And I tell you what's really nice to do as well, when you're making your leaves, make some without any wires on so you can scatter some around the bottom of your arrangement. Even if you're making a vase of flowers and leaves for a client, just give them a couple of loose leaves to put underneath, and that will add to the illusion when somebody comes over and says, oh, how did you manage to get those at this time of year? It's just really nice. And if you're making summer flowering flowers and a bee sniffs them, you know you've done a job. Right, let's get some colour on these acorns now as well. So I've only made 2 acorns for this. You can obviously make as many as you like, but watch the motion. So starting at the top and stroking down. And I'm being quite definite with this because I almost wanted that acorn to be slightly stripy. We're going to add more colour onto it, but that really, really does make a difference. And that's just that lovely squirrel brown. So you're going to do the same to both of them. I can go a bit faster now because I've explained what I was doing. And be really scruffy on the acorn cup because we want that to be a real mixture of colours. So instead of just using milk chocolate or just using dark chocolate, the two of them mixed together make a really lovely colour. And what you can do every now and again is then dip into just pure dark chocolate, which is really rich. But if you want something darker than milk and lighter than dark, mix the two together. So you'll see this colour now, but I just wanted to show you me mixing some colours. But I have, when I've got work to do and I'm not filming or teaching, I've normally just got a big plate and I let them all mix together. I'm catching a bit, I'm leaving the yellow at the bottom. Can you see, the greeny moss green at the bottom? Don't go all the way to the bottom, and do patches, and particularly catch those edges of the leaf. You can scrub it into a vein every now and again. And just like I mentioned with the horse chestnut, these leaves are really going to come alive when we spray them. But you've guessed it, you've got to go ahead and do it to all of them. So I always say it, but I really wish I could work this fast. I get a little bit carried away, and I mean, if I'm working this in sugar, there's nothing more satisfying than that heated metal skewer, and it sizzles when it goes through the leaf to make lovely little caterpillar holes. But I tend to do those for ones that are on the floor. So unwired leaves in that case. There we go. And I've made some of them darker than others as well. Now, you can fold up that kitchen paper out of the way, and then it gives you a new palette. So don't keep throwing away one piece of kitchen paper after another. Just fold it over, and then you've got a nice neat start. So I'm using that same mixture. I'm just touching where the cup meets the acorn. Can you see? And then I'm going up a little bit. But it looks like a really lovely dirty patch at the bottom of the acorn, doesn't it? Splash, splash, splash. So you are literally going dab, 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 dab. You can use that milk and dark chocolate mix, and can you see me going in with the dark chocolate mix as well? So dark chocolate just on its own, and that'll just give me dirty patches. Now everything you do is going to be emphasized when you spray it. So bear that in mind, and you could even have a spare piece of paste rolled out to test out your colours. Now this rust red is glorious, so I really had to use some of this, and I wanted to catch the edges of the leaves. Look at that lovely tinge of red on the edges. I just thought that would be so nice. So I'll go ahead and do that to all of those. Now, when you're working in sugar, you can leave your leaves dry for a little bit before you do them. I actually like to leave my Hearty Soft Deluxe and my cold porcelain overnight before I dust them, and that's the best effect. So the first thing we're going to do, those 5 leaves for horse chestnut, we're going to tape those together into an individual leaf stem. So the first thing you want to do is to set them all out and bend the stems right where it meets the leaf, because you're only barely going to see a little hint of this. And you're going to attach your tape to the largest leaf. And I'm still using half width because, as I mentioned, I pull my tape down nice and tight. So start with the 2 mediums, and they are actually sitting ever so slightly forward and turned in towards the leaf. Give it one twist. Sorry, I'm off camera. There we go, one twist, and then adjust. Now they won't stay where you put them yet, but you need to have a little play around with them. So that would be wrong if they're completely flat, but we've got 2 more to add on. So you're going to watch the changes happen with this. Give that tape a really good tug, and then add the last 2 in. Can you see I'm pulling them so that they're almost turning forward to face that central leaf? And when we did these, we made some of the edges really lovely and scruffy by ripping the paste from around the veiner. So we rolled out the paste, we put it in the double-sided veiner, and then we ripped it away. And it just all adds to the impression, doesn't it, of just everything when the leaves are just starting to turn. One twist to hold it into position, and then when you're happy they're where you want them to be, you could tape down to the bottom. I'll just pop that there so you can have a little look. There, so can you see how short amount of stem we need for the green before it hits the brown stem? So I try to only really tape down to where I need it to join, and maybe ½ centimetre to 1 centimetre extra. So you tape to the bottom if you're going to add the leaf itself on its own into an arrangement. But if you're going to put it onto something like this, it's up to you. Now, I know for a fact I've got to thicken all the brown stems. So on this occasion, I'm using the green to get the stem to the right thickness. So can you see I've gone down to where I know is going to join the brown, and now I'm going back up for about 1.5 centimeters, and I rip off so I don't get any perfect clean tape cuts. But that means you've got the stem coming down and getting wider at the bottom before it catches into the brown. So go ahead and do that to the other one as well, exactly the same, so we won't dwell too much on this one. And you can see the lovely shape. Let's concentrate on that leaf on the left. Can you see it's got this lovely bowl shape? And you saw me sort of curling it in my hands as well to get the right shape. It really does sit nicely that way as well. There, can you see it on those as well? Right, we'll move on to the oak now. So we need to put the oak leaves together. You can take them into little groups, okay? So tape, say, 2 acorns together. You can do as many as you like, but literally what you see in front of you is all I made on this particular course, because this was actually an extra. We had already finished our subject, so we thought we'd do something extra. Add some twiddles. Can you see I'm folding the tape back on itself? There we go, leaving it attached to another piece. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up 2 leaves, face them towards each other, hold the twiddle underneath. There we go. And then I find I wrap the twiddle a bit and then tape down. So can you see? So I don't need a lot of stem again, exactly the same thing. But what you can actually do is reattach that stem, and we're going to do the unthinkable. We're going to wrap and wrap and wrap. Look at the mess. And can you see the stem is twisted? So when that tape is twisted and you wrap it around the stem, it creates these lovely lines and knots, and it's just really gorgeous. So that is going to be one little side shoot coming off our main stem. How cute is that? And see, those leaves almost look like they're bouncing away, don't they? And the beauty with Hearty Soft Deluxe Air Drying Clay is that you can bend it. So I'm going to do the same now with the acorns. Just start that twiddle off. And I know I went off camera on this, but all you need to do is to grab 5 leaves this time and face them towards the acorns in, shall we call it a rosette? So they're going to be all the way around in a circle around. There we go. Can you see? Then we're going to tape in lots and lots of wrapping bits and messy bits. And then can you see that little extra stem, the little tiny one that we taped first? I've added that halfway down. So let's look at the 5 first. You can see all different sizes. That looks way more natural than if they're all the same. And now we'll have a look at that little side shoot. How cute is that? But then you do need to give it some movement. So bend the stem, pull the leaves around, twist one sideways, give curves, and it just looks so much more natural. There we go. Now, obviously, you make as many of these as you like, and in air drying clay, they last forever. You've probably gathered by looking at some of my videos that I really am keen on the twisty, gnarly, knotty wood that you see. So I love doing cherry blossom branches in the spring. But look at those 2 gnarly stems. So now we need to make that horse chestnut one look like the one that I've already made. So you need another twiddle. And the twiddles are just to stop the stem ending abruptly, because if we tape over a wire, so we're going to have a 20 gauge wire here, you could go up to an 18, but I wanted to be able to bend it. I'm showing you the twiddle at the end, but I'll give it more natural movement in a moment. There we go. And what you need to do is to add texture again. Now, it won't be the same texture as oak, so you can make it slightly flatter. And I start taping on the twiddle, not on the wire. So what it does, it graduates the thickness of that twiddle onto the wire, and all it looks like is that the branch just got thinner and thinner and thinner. It just looks so nice. There, see? And you really don't need much for this bit. So don't keep going on forever, because that is where we're going to add in another support. And the other support is just to make sure that if you're working in sugar, for example, even if you work really finely, sugar is heavier than the air drying clay. There's no weight to it whatsoever. So I've got a little bit of twiddle, but where the twiddle ends, that's where my nice leaf branch goes in. and you add the leaf branch in with the twiddled section. So wrap that tape really nicely to get a good bulge in, call it like a knuckle. So if you think of where your finger goes into your hand and it's got the knuckle, we're giving a knuckle joint where that leaf is joining the stem. And it's just little things like that, just make it really nice. Now I've taped down, but what we need to do now is we need to thicken it. So you can add extra tape in now as well. So you can add as many rows of tape as you like, but you could also thicken with with kitchen paper as well. You can see that knuckle though, doesn't it look great? Blend it in a little bit. Just a little bit. It doesn't have to be too much. And we don't need to blend it right down to the bottom. But if you think of a branch on a tree, even a slim branch, it gradually gets thicker towards the main tree itself, doesn't it? So I just thickened it a little bit, and you can go back up again as well. Because don't forget, we've got another leaf to go in. There, you can see how twisty the stem is just until that second leaf is going in, and I'm adding it in with a twiddle as well. Same as before. Wrap once around the stem before you pick up the leaf so that your tape is already attached to your stem, and then pop one leaf going one way and one leaf going the other. So if I was doing a cherry blossom, I would already have thickened the first bit. You can make your decision looking at the branch that you're trying to copy. You can see this is quite a thin branch that we're doing, but I'm just going to show you how I add my kitchen paper. Now the Florist tape by now is already sticky, so you are folding over the left hand side and tucking it in. See that bit there, tuck it in, and then you fold down the top just to help that knuckle shape. So do you remember we made the efforts to have the knuckle there? We want to fold that down and the knuckle will still be there. But the kitchen paper will actually be the lower half of the knuckle. And did you see me break it off at the bottom and add in another piece? Because it does need to be thicker at the bottom. Now, if it starts to unravel, glue brush, and it'll hold it in place. It's nice to put a row of tape right the way down to the bottom. And if I was thickening a stem such as a gerbera, you could give several coats of the kitchen paper and then 2 or 3 coats of the stem, and then brush the stem with the side of a scissors blade to make it all nice and smooth, and you can no longer see the wrap in the tape. But on trees, you can do what you like and you can have all of the beautiful texture. Look at that. And I'm not gonna lie and tell you this is a quick job, because twiddling a stem really does take a long time. If you have a look at my other tutorials as well, I've got the Japanese garden one, and one of the parts is a maple tree, a miniature maple tree. And I am talking miniature because each leaf is smaller than a centimetre. And obviously a maple tree needs texture as well. But I had to do the texture really, really carefully, because can you imagine how thin the branches and the trunk needed to be? So as you can see, I've only added 2 sections. So you're going to go ahead right down to the bottom. We'll do a hey presto, hang on. And if you decide you don't need the additional wire, you can always trim off the extra wire. But a really good idea is to make sure that your branch could just be put in a vase, and then you can do so many things with it. Watch what happens to these leaves when I spray now. So you know I promised that those colours were going to come to life. Wow, look at that. Lots of little short bursts of spray, like don't just go really, really long. And that way you won't flood your leaf with too much liquid. Still do the back, light coats. And we already did it lighter on the back with the colour, didn't we? But watch these veins. Look at that. Now this will, the wetness will disappear because I haven't used a super shiny glaze, and that's what you want. You want it to be nice and matte and blend in all those colours beautifully. Do exactly the same with the acorns and oak leaves, but if you wanted to, you could use something shiny like the cake star spray, or you can even dip the acorns into a spray glaze, but don't dip the cups because the cups are so much more textured. And a good tip, always leave them drying on kitchen paper. And there you go, our horse chestnut and oak stems are all finished. And you can also see a sneaky peek of something that will be coming up in the future as well. Gorgeous blackberries. So thank you for watching. We'd love you if you could hit like and subscribe, and I will see you soon. Happy caking!